Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're watching this, right? So, in this topic, basically, we're going to look into how you would be analyzing your data, right? And what are the methods, or how do you interpret your data that you have accumulated? More of formula and the significance or the logic, the philosophy behind, let's say, the normal curve and so on and so forth. Right? Quantitative, we have quantitative content analysis, right? Which basically it has to come under quantitative research method, right? In which classical procedure, right, for analyzing textual material of whatever origin, right? Remember, we have qualitative content analysis and also quantitative content analysis. In qualitative, you not necessarily have to go to find the mean or median or mode and so on and so forth. But here you have to jot on how many times certain scenes are repeating certain, let's say, if you're analyzing newspapers, you may want to record how many times a certain word is repeating, right? Because maybe that is your objective. Maybe you want to see you want to investigate whether there are racist portrayal in Disney movies, right? Then you find how many you are researching 5 years of Disney's product, and then you see that if there are any stereotypical characters, like if it's if the princess has to be always white, right? There's no black princess and so on and so forth. That's how you do conduct quantitative content analysis. An empirical method for systematic intersubjectivity transparent description of substantial and formal features of messages. Right? These are all definitions, and what I have explained is the function of content analysis. Right? So you classify the content of text by allocating statements, sentences, or words to a system of categories. Basically categorizing or grouping them. Normally for content analysis you have code book, right? Either develop your own code book, or you can refer the existing research code book, like family frameworks that has been done by previous researcher, right? So maybe you can put, for example, then you want to say sexist remarks, then you group it any words or sentences that might that could be indicating meaning that says the meaning that being connoted as sexist and so on, right? Okay. Right. And then analytics, strategic in content analysis, one is frequency analysis, right? How frequent they are emerging, they are being shown, they are shown in the text, how many times, how frequent they are, right? Used to infer the medial presence of a topic in the daily newspapers, for example, right? How often was the topic health fund an issue the most important? Maybe currently, like in Malaysia, maybe right now what is the prominent issue? Maybe COVID-19, right? You look into the past 3 months, and then you find that every day there's a news about COVID-19, right? The tagline of COVID-19 comes, which shows there's importance. Maybe there are other important news or issue, but didn't receive much highlight. Then you can, maybe your investigation, your research wants to find why important issues are neglected in mainstream newspapers, for example, right? So these are steps in quantitative content analysis, right? Very much similar to qualitative content analysis, right? This you can go through, right? Which text relevant for the purpose of your study, right? Not everything, right? Because the text, like say for example, deciding on the entire text, not necessarily relevant to your studies or research. Maybe purpose and relevant is the only keyword, for example, right? Only relevant to your research, right? Then you just pick and then group them, or maybe putting into the context, right? Maybe the entire sentence is needed to generate a meaning, right? And then draw a sample from this text before defining the counting unit right? All or certain words, groups of words, sentences, complete articles, headlines, and etc. Right. Previously, when I was doing a paper on Malaysia Kini, I think it was Malaysia Kini versus the Star, right? So we only used the headlines, right? What kind of words it used, what is the tone, right? What it tried to indicate. So we just analyze the headline, right? But it's not comprehensive, lah, right? Of course, the people normally use headlines as a clickbait, right? To a more sensational kind of headlines to attract audiences and so on, right? So it is not advisable, right? So derive a system of categories from the research question and its theoretical background, right? Mutually exclusive, exhaustive, precise, based on discrete dimensions and independent, right? And then dictionary is established, right? That's what right? You have code books to categorize your themes or units and so on. And then statistical analysis, right? You want to display how many words has been there, how many things that indicate this, right? How many things shows otherwise, right? And then you build your arguments from there. Right, problems, right? When you isolate the words words out of passages or passages out of the entire paragraph, for instance, it could be meaning something else compared to what it's supposed to mean, right? So what we call as taken out of context, right? That could be a problem. And also to find coherence of meaning in text when you are isolating your words or passages, right? Statistics, right? Basically, it is numerical or graphical representation of large data in a summary form. One is descriptive and second is inferential, right? So in descriptive statistics, right, our aim is to use the softwares and everything, right, the existing charts and so on, to describe the emerging patterns in the data, right? For example, here, who prefers what, right? How many percentage of people prefers chocolate, right? Some kind of pattern, right? Applicable to other form of data as well, right? So concise summary of the data rather than going through, although you still need to write about them, but this presentation will allow people to understand and grasp their understanding of your data, right? So it measures central tendency, means, mode, and median, and then dispersion, range, variance, and standard deviation, where you could use charts and graphs to display your data, right? So this is what we call as normal distribution, where you see each side mirrors exactly the other, right? So there are no variations in the middle, right? So it reaches a peak and then right? So it reaches a peak and then it slows down, it decreases in the same pattern, right? So unimodal, which really has one peak, right? So mean, mode, and median, right, which we call as central tendency or popular average, right? Every central tendency measures, right, average of each statistics on your data, right? So mean is the arithmetic average, right, computed by the sum of all values, right, divided by number of values, right? I believe you have, mean, median, and mode is very common, right? You might have known. Formulas are important, but we are using the assistance of softwares and so on. You would not have much problem in conducting to generate the analysis, right? And then median, middle value or midpoint in the data, less affected by outliers and skewed data than the mean. Basically value that splits. If you see, there are two different data, right? The middle number, right? The middle number between these two data, right? These two numbers, right? To find the median, order your data basically from smallest to largest, right? If you see here, 2, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 8, 10, and then 12, 13, right? It's increasing, right? So in the middle you will find so there are equal numbers here and there, right? So the middle one will be your median. Okay. And then mode is basically which value or category that occurs within the data, the most often within the data. So here obviously 7, right? 7 is the number that can, I mean that is the mode of the particular data, right? Measures of dispersion, right? Its role is to show the scatterings of the data and tells the variation of the data from one another. Right, so it gives a clear idea about the distribution of the data and shows the homogeneity or the heterogeneity of the distribution of the observations. Right, for instance, how do I say? Right, where is your, let's say, is your pie chart? Bar chart. And maybe the data one is shows that there are many people. There are many, maybe about 30% are interested in watching cinema at theaters, and there are, let's say, there are about 20% there are what do you call, to go for drive-in theaters and drive-in cinemas, right? That, so this kind of dispersions, right, should be rigidly defined, easy to calculate and understand, not affected much by the fluctuations of observation based on all observations, basically, right? Measures of dispersion is categorized as: one is absolute measure of dispersion, which express the scattering of observation in terms of distance, right? Range, quartile, and deviation, we'll look into that shortly. Options like mean deviation and standard deviation, right? These two also will look shortly into that. Relative measure of dispersion, comparing distribution of two or more data set for unit free comparison, right? We'll look the formula as well, right? Right, and then we have range, right? The quartile and so on and so forth, right? So basically, it is, the range would be difference between two extreme observation of the data set, like the largest score, for example, and the smallest score, right? So maximum and the minimum, you would minus them to get your, so right. So this is an example, right? Here, what will be your so 9 minus probably 1, yeah, right? And then that would be your range, right? So when you have ordinal data, or you're presenting a result to people with little or no knowledge of statistics, right? So you can use the range to explain your data, right? So quartile deviation, right? We have first, second, and third quartile, right? These are all formulas how you can calculate, right? And then coefficient of quartile deviation. These are more into formula, right? Quartile deviation, right? Then mean deviation, or what we call as average deviation, how deviated they are from your right, deviation taken from any average, especially mean, median, or mode, right? You are taking from either mean or median or mode, right? And you have to ignore negative items while taking deviation and consider all of them as positive, right? Standard deviation, right, propounded by Carl Pearson, and after observing the existence of demerit other deviation, right, much more accurate than the range or interquartile range, because basically a range is about taking the maximum unit and then minus with the minimum unit, right? So you can calculate skewness where it lies, right? Where is your preference lies, for instance, right? Preference of people going to MACD, for instance, right? Where is it lenient to, right? And then correlation, if there are relationships between variables and so on, right? So it measures the dispersion of figures around the mean, right? Mean, we have average, you can measure where they are, right? So when you have data, when you put it in software, then you would come out and show you where they are, right? So this is the formula, I mean the steps you have to do to find out standard deviation, right? So it's normally very simple. When you put it into SPSS, right, it would do everything for you, right? So variance from squared deviation scores, right? So basically the logic is that larger the variances, the more the scores deviate on average away from the mean, right? Smaller, exactly opposite lah, right? I could share some graphs with you, right, which could explain this, right? Just remind me, right? And then indicate coefficient of variation indicates the spread of values around the mean by a percentage. So, right, so the formula would be to find the coefficient, standard deviation that you have got it from here, right? And then we times 100, then divide by mean. So here which means the bottom part would be where you what do you call your argument, your analysis would be, right? You would play around with this, right? So this is an example, right? So since the coefficient of variation for weight is greater than that of weight, we would tend to conclude that weight has more variability than height in the population, right? So this is how an example for you to build build your analysis, right? So that would be it. For next chapter, we'll look into much detail and with steps in SPSS as well.